All right, Miss Carol, Pawpaw. Let's
Oh,
talk a little bit about Pawpaw, especially the history. Definitely want folks to hear that.
I know I was thrilled when you said we want to talk about pawpaw
Yeah.
because I told you I feel like I'm the patron saint of pawpaw.
All
And
right.
why is it not more popular? I mean, there's so many movements now. Native, edible fruit for your own backyard, butterfly gardening because it's a host plant. So there's so many reasons to have it in our landscape.
Right.
But to start with, it is a native tree that we find in our understory and far more common than people realize. It's really not hard to find in rich understory all throughout West Tennessee. And when you do, it's usually kind of a grove. It's all one plant, actually interconnected by rhizomes. It has the largest North American fruit, and it is very tropical in flavor and in scent. And in fact, it is the last surviving member of a tropical family that was wiped out by the ice ages.
Wow.
But the pawpaw said, you know what, I can make it here in North America. I'm made of tough
And
stuff.
survived. Oh, good.
So its historical interest to me, I love everything Lewis and Clark. I've probably read
I know
a
you
lot
do.
of,
I know you do.
I just think that is such a cool time.
Right.
And their adventures when they went out, of course, they were trained somewhat botanically before they left on their adventures by Thomas Jefferson.
Right.
And so they were collecting things. And they were, of course, packed a lot of food with them, but they began to run out of starches. They were not starving because they were good hunters and they could kill meat. But they were actually losing weight because they were on a forced Atkins diet.
Forced Atkins.
So, when they ran
boy.
into Sacagawea, and there's different ways of pronouncing it, I know, and so I'm not sure if I'm saying that properly. Sacagawea, some people say.
Wow.
She was the one who taught them some of the wild foods that they could eat on the way, which tubers they could dig out of the wild, and then the fruits that they could eat. So she turned them on to the pawpaw.
Okay.
So for that reason, pawpaw is still celebrated at Monticello. And Thomas Jefferson and George Washington kind of shared a love for plants. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of times they exchanged plants. And it turns out that George Washington's favorite dessert was a chilled pawpaw.
How about that?
Isn't that cool?
That is cool.
There are recipes, if you want to, you can find online. You can even find pawpaw festivals in different parts of the country.
Okay.
So I think that's something that people might be interested in that are growing more of their own backyard fruit, but they need to realize it's not really easy to just plant one pawpaw tree and get fruit. They have to have two separate seed-grown clones to pollinate each other.
Okay.
So if you find that big grove out in the woods, it's actually one clone and it cannot pollinate itself.
Okay.
So two separate seed-grown individuals, and they have to be fairly close because oddly they're pollinated by flies and beetles. And they don't fly very far like our bees would. Bees can travel great distances to do the pollination. But flies and beetles aren't very enthusiastic. So the two need to be planted fairly close. And sometimes even people will do hand pollination with taking the pollen off the flower with one and dabbing on the other if they're afraid they don't have the right pollinators. Apparently there's a good bit of difference from one clone to the next about the fruit quality. So there have actually been selections made from the wild for superior fruits, and they've been given names. Like Rebecca's Gold and Sunshine and Sunflower. And they're actually available in Tennessee from a mail order nursery in Hidden Springs, called Hidden Springs Nursery in Cookeville, Tennessee.
Okay.
So, and those are actually grafted so that you can actually know that you're going to get the superior fruit. And then, of course, the other reason we want to grow it is for the state butterfly. Our state butterfly is the zebra swallowtail, and its caterpillars will feed only on pawpaw foliage. So
The only host plant for
only host plant for it, just a real specialist there.
it. Wow.
So if people are interested in, and the conditions that you normally find it in the wild are in the shade,
Right.
but it will actually flower and be a better formed tree in sun. So you can put it in the sun, it will form more of a big pyramid rather than just mostly trunk with a few upper leaves.
Okay.
And it will produce more fruit for you in sun.
I usually see them understory.
Right.
Yeah.
Overton Park.
Yeah.
Huge population of them in the back of Overton Park, and they're understory in there, and some of them with trunks that big around, which is kind of rare in the wild.
Yeah. Memphis Botanic Garden.
Yes.
That's another place where I've seen them understory.
And you look at them; those big leaves kind of tell you it's tropical.
Yeah,
You know, they look very tropical, and the fruit again tells you that it's tropical, and sometimes called poor man's banana.
Okay.
But a
Yeah, I was
great-
going to ask you, what did it taste like?
Yeah. It's sort of banana. The texture is banana-like, but it has a little bit more of a pineapple-y smell, just in that tropical realm. It's pretty good. Some of the ones that aren't the best flavored have a little bit of a hint of turpentine quality, just a little bit of a bite. But again, there's a good chance that you're going to get a good one, even if you just plant a seed-grown individual and not necessarily a grafted individual.
Okay. So you can actually grow them for seed? Would it
Oh,
be-
they're easily grown from seed.
Easily grown from
In
seed.
fact,
Good.
the ones that I got started on our farm down in Mississippi, I gathered the ripe pawpaws in Overton Park,
Okay.
which will be late summer. Is
Late
when
summer,
you want to start
okay.
looking
Good,
for them.
good.
And they're kind of hard to spot when they're green because they kind of blend in. But
Okay.
start looking on the ground. A lot of wild things will eat them, and you'll smell them as well. And gather those, clean the seed. Go ahead and plant them that fall because they need to go through the winter chill before they're going to sprout in the
Right.
spring. But then they come up readily. I mean, almost every one of them sprouted.
What about that? What would you plant them in?
I just planted
kind
them in
of
regular
medium?
potting
Just regular
soil.
potting soil.
But if you just wanted to get them established, if you've already got a good place for them to grow, say a kind of a woodland area, and you want to plant them on the edge, I just press them down into the soil in the fall and look for them the next spring and maybe mark them so that you don't accidentally step on them or mow them down.
Wow, so good germination rates.
Very good germination rates for them.
Really good. Now, how about this? What about any pests or diseases
Well,
that
the
we
only
know of?
pest would be our zebra swallowtail.
Okay, okay.
So if you see the leaves eaten, don't run for your spray.
Right.
Look up the caterpillar, and you can easily recognize that. I'll use, a lot of times the internet to do the image search, so they'll know what they're looking at. But no, there's no pest at all, which is another good reason to grow the plant.
Yeah.
So, and it's an attractive plant. It's one flaw as a landscape plant is the fact that it does tend to sucker and form a colony. So if it does, you may not want it to do that. Simply remove those suckers as soon as you see them. But it would be great if you could put them in an area where you could let it colonize. In fact, if the two separate individuals could kind of interweave, then you'll get a lot better pollination rates and much better fruit bearing, which is what has happened, I believe, in Overton Park.
Okay.
Because Overton Park's a very heavy fruit bearing population.
Wow. Late summer is when we need to
Yes.
check out the fruit. Okay.
Right, And again, Hidden Springs Nursery in Cookeville, Tennessee, run by Hector Black and his daughters. Very ethical, good. In fact, they specialize in backyard fruit that can be easily grown with low input.
Good deal. Yeah, that sounds like something the homeowner should
Right.
invest in to me.
Yes, I agree.
Wow. And I like the history,
Oh, I do too.
you know?
Yes, I know. There's so much
I think that's pretty
fun
neat.
things to tell kids about it too, to
think
get
so.
them interested in gardening too at a young age, which ties in with what you're doing.
Right,
as
the
well.
plant camp.
Right.
Right,
Next year we'll do Sacagawea and the
Oh,
pawpaws.
cool.
No, I don't know.
You
But we
ought
should
to.
consider it though.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll think about that. That's
to do the
pretty neat.
history of some of our native plants and things that grow here.
If I could ever do that for you, come over and talk about
Great.
plants and how they're used in the wild. And, little boys love that. How would I survive in the wild?
Yes. Yeah.
Kind of thing. I do talks like that for children frequently.
Okay, good. We'll certainly keep that in mind.
Well, great.
How about that? We're all about making connections
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. But yeah, when I was in graduate school, of course, I had a friend of mine who actually did his master's work on pawpaw.
Yeah.
And we actually went to Maryland to a pawpaw patch to learn a little bit more about pawpaw. And we learned the song.
I was going to
that
say,
actually
there
goes
is a
with it.
song
Okay,
about
are
Yeah.
we ready? Can we sing it?
Yeah, picking
the
up pawpaws, put them in the basket. Yeah, that was it.
pawpaws put in the
Yeah,
basket.
I remember that. And what, way down yonder in the pawpaw patch. So there you have it. How about that?
And also, I meant to mention that Kentucky has a huge pawpaw research project, and they've collected all the named cultivars. They have anti-carcinogen properties, the twigs and the leaves, which are being investigated. So that's all legit. Purdue and
Anti-what?
University of Kentucky, anti-cancer.
Oh, okay, okay.
Cancer.
Yeah. So it's got to be a big deal, really. Very interesting, and probably deserves our attention more.
I think it does.
Definitely.
I think it does. All right, we appreciate that information and that history. That was real good.
Good.
Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. To find out more information on this topic, just click on the familyplotgarden.com link in the description.